Ever catch yourself daydreaming about having a clone? You know, someone to like tackle that to-do list or maybe hit the gym for you.
Well, get ready, because today we're deep diving into the world of cloning.
It's a topic that's, well, it's both fascinating and kind of terrifying at the same time.
Totally. And the podcast we're diving into, they really go there. They talk about the good, the bad, even the should we even when it comes to cloning.
We're talking medical breakthroughs, the ethics of bringing back like a lost loved one.
Right. And they even get into whether or not they'd actually want to clone themselves.
Which, let's be honest, is the question we all secretly want answered.
Okay, so before we spawn 1,000 ethical dilemmas.
Can you give us a quick cloning 101?
Sure. So cloning, at its core, is really about creating an identical copy of an organism's DNA.
Okay, so far so safe.
Right, but here's where it gets interesting. There isn't just one type of cloning. You've got things like therapeutic cloning.
Therapeutic cloning.
Yeah, so that focuses on using clones for, like, medical treatments.
Okay.
Say you have a heart attack. With therapeutic cloning, you could potentially take your own cells and basically engineer them to repair that damaged heart tissue.
Whoa, so it's like a self-made repair kit, but biological.
Exactly.
That's wild. And I know the podcast talked about a bunch of other potential benefits of this technology. What really stood out to you?
Well, for me, it's the potential for tackling genetic diseases. I mean,
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah, they brought that up.
Like, they talked about cystic fibrosis, which is caused by a single faulty gene, and it's devastating. But with cloning,
Yeah,
we could potentially, correct that gene.
and potentially save millions of lives.
Yeah.
That's pretty mind-blowing. But it wasn't all like sunshine and roses,
Mhm.
right? I mean, the podcast talked about the potential downsides too.
No, absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest concerns is the risk of unintended mutations.
Mutations.
Yeah, like during the cloning process itself. So you could end up creating a clone that has all sorts of health problems that you couldn't have even anticipated.
And that just opens up a whole other can of ethical worms.
Exactly.
You know, that actually reminds me of something else they talked about, which was cloning endangered species.
On the surface, it sounds amazing, right? Like, imagine bringing back a dodo bird.
Right.
But then what if that dodo is born with, I don't know, a compromised immune system because of the cloning?
It really highlights how, even with the best intentions, there can be these unintended consequences. And when you're talking about manipulating life itself, those consequences are, well, they're huge.
Yeah. Which I guess kind of leads us to probably the biggest question, ethically speaking, around cloning, which is, could we or should we use it to bring back, like, someone we've lost?
Yeah, they really dug into that in the podcast.
Like, is that even ethical?
It comes down to the whole idea of, like, what makes a person an individual?
Right.
If you create a clone of someone, is it really them? With all their memories, their personality? Or is it, like, a totally new person who just happens to share the same DNA?
It's almost like a philosophical question at that point.
Right.
And, it made me think, like, even if you could guarantee a perfect replica, is it ethical to bring someone back without them, like, consenting to it?
And that's not even getting into the potential for exploitation.
Oh, right. They talked about that too.
Like, imagine the pressure on a grieving family, even if they don't truly want to create a clone, you know? It's a lot.
It really is. And we haven't even touched on the, like, societal implications if this technology became widespread.
Oh, yeah. The podcast really went there.
They were imagining a world where clones were just, like, a normal thing.
And what that would do to our understanding of family. Like, what happens to the whole parent-child dynamic when you've got a genetic copy of yourself walking around?
And it made me think about the social implications. Like, what if only rich people can afford cloning technology?
It could create a whole new class system.
Exactly. It makes it clear that cloning isn't just a science problem.
It's a human problem.
Yeah. We're going to need, like, philosophers and ethicists and sociologists. Everyone's got to be at the table for this one.
For sure.
So, for everyone listening, after taking this deep dive, I got to ask, has your perspective on cloning shifted at all?
Because it's clearly about way more than just mad scientists and test tubes. It's about, like, the future. And what kind of future do we want to create? That's something to think about.